Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1162, written by ClickSackMcQuack. My granddad saved me from the brink of death. So I'll share a somewhat positive story. When I was very young, I had violent rear exit stomach issues and vomiting for a couple of days. My mom took me to my grandmother, who was a nurse. She took one look at me and rushed me to the hospital. I was so dehydrated that I couldn't even drink on my own. I came very close to death at one point, but I recovered eventually. A couple of weeks later, my mom and grandmother were talking about my stay at the hospital. My mom said something along the lines of how the doctors brought me back, when I apparently piped up and corrected her. No, it was my granddad. He pulled me out of the hole. My grandfather had passed away a few years earlier. My mother said my grandmother just closed her eyes and smiled. I can't remember any of it since I was so young, but I still think about it every now and again. My grandmother saved my life. I'm glad I was able to somewhat repay her by making her happy that day. She passed away a few years later. I'd like to think she and my grandfather are together and happy. Cheers to my nanny and my granddad. Case notes are file 1162. I was saved by my granddad from the brink of death. So a few stories ago, there was an account of a woman being saved in what she described as a great black void of nothingness, with a speck of light in the distance. An older man she didn't know, who had recently passed, was there, told her to go into the light. I wonder what effect the light signifies. In one sense, we can think of it like voluntarily restarting the game. I think it's a choice to be saved. Even quantum immortality, when it applies, I think is a choice. Like if you die in a video game, you can just choose to restart or exit, maybe return to the real world. And yes, guardian angels exist. Perhaps the fragments of loved ones or family members still lingering around, maybe they chose the option to linger around. And it does have deleterious effects. And maybe they don't know that. You know, these choices we make aren't always made with complete information. That's the other aspect to it. And you know, how you framed it in your day's state reminds me of Castiel pulling Dean from the depths of hell, raised from perdition, plucked from the deep hole. Yeah, I don't think you were in hell. Maybe a type of oblivion that you can choose to exit. But it's always easier with help. Case file number 1163, written by Aaron Jill 1. When ghostly guests join you in bed. About 3 years ago, I was helping a friend move. It was a historic home that had been empty for years and years, built in the 1850s, I believe. The moving truck was a day late. Surprise! So I ended up sleeping on an air mattress. I conked out early, like 8 p.m., while she went out for drinks. I woke up because the air mattress moved about a bit and had gotten firmer, like someone or something had sat on the bed. I kicked my foot around thinking it was my friend back from the bars. Nothing. But the mattress gets squishy again. I try to go back to sleep, and about 10 minutes later, it starts happening again. Being awake, I realize it felt like my dog getting ready for bed. Circle, 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 pause, circle, paw, circle, pause, circle. Okay, lay down. I could feel the individual steps. Obviously, there were no animals in the house. I thought about pulling out my cell phone or getting up, but decided whatever it was seemed benevolent enough, so I went back to sleep. I didn't mention it to my friend at the time. She gets creeped out real easy, and I didn't want to ruin her new home. About a year later, she got a dog, Suzuki, and I'm visiting her for the first time since the move. Woohoo! Upgraded to a real bed and everything. A pair of shoes gets eaten by the under the bed space, so I flop on the floor and stick my hand under the bed to get them. Something licks my hand. Whatever. Suzuki clearly snuck under the bed. Pull up the bed skirt. No Suzuki. But a dozen or more dog toys. Weird. I mentioned to my friend, who gets real quiet. She doesn't know how the toys keep getting into the guest room. She has to keep it closed because Suzuki kept going in there and barking and scratching up the original wooden floor, playing so hard. My conclusion, lonely and friendly dog or cat ghost. I tried to convince her to leave the door open, but she won't. Doesn't let guests sleep in there anymore. Makes me sad thinking the ghost is just lonely. Case notes for file 1163. When ghostly guests join you in bed. Isn't it wonderful how peaceful our minds get when sleeping? Or in that gently awakened state? Without knowledge otherwise, we assume the best. Anything to justify going back to sleep. There could be banging on the door, lightning strikes, tornadoes, hurricanes, dogs barking, whatever it is. I just want to sleep. Let me go back to bed. I hate having to sleep, but I love sleeping. Is anyone else like that? It's very weird. One thing I take away from stories involving ghostly pets, well, it's further evidence that they have souls. At least some of them. Perhaps some people, some animals, some things we qualify as living with sentience aren't just placeholders from the simulation, but definitely some of them are real, connected with a real soul of sentience. And it is curious to ponder though, how deep down it goes. Do viruses have souls? Well, no. What about trees? No. What about insects? Then it starts to make you think. To what extent does it reach? I don't know for sure, but I'm starting to get weary going beyond insects. Bonus file written by DirtyMouth. Whispers of Life from the Beyond. In 2011, my great-grandmother was very, very sick. She had just turned 90 and had been in a loopy state for a few years. She was suffering from internal bleeding, but the tests to figure out where would have likely killed her, so she was hopped up on morphine. It was so sad, truly. Mix that in with dementia. Anyway, my husband and I had stopped by to see her in the hospital to say our final goodbyes. She barely remembered who I was, but her eyes were very loving. We spent a great deal of time with her, just by her side, knowing this was her deathbed. After a long time, I went to lean in and give her a kiss. She whispered in my ear, "You're going to be a great mother. She's going to be so lucky to have you." My husband heard it too. I was taken aback. She couldn't have known that we were struggling with infertility issues or my desire to be a mother. I was a little upset because I'd given up hope of ever being a mom. I chalked it up to her dementia, kissed her head, let a tear fall, told her I loved her and walked out the door. A few days went by and I planned on stopping back again, but had work conflicts. The family let me know she was still holding on by a thread, and I wished she would just let go because I hated seeing her in so much pain. That night, I had a dream, a very vivid one. In the dream, I was a small child. My great-granny was there, in a flowing white dress with beautiful white hair. She had me sit on her lap. She kissed my forehead, told me she loved me, and then said, "If you were any bigger, I'd put you in my pocket." Something she'd always said to me. I cried into her chest, told her I didn't want her to go, but she told me she'd always be with me. Then she disappeared. When I woke up, the first thing I did was call my grandmother, my great-granny's daughter. Before she could say anything, I frantically told her about my dream, down to every last detail. She paused, sighed, and said, "Honey, your great-granny passed last night around midnight. Maybe she was stopping by to say goodbye." I was taken aback. I was raised religious, but I'm not religious myself. I remember thinking that I wish I could believe she stopped by to see me on her way to the other side, but that those were just delusional thoughts. I missed her terribly and cried. A few months went by. New Year's of 2012 hit, and I tried to have a beer with my husband, but I got sick. I was very tired, cranky, and sick. Everything I ate came right back up. I was convinced it was the flu until a friend told me I was pregnant. I told her, "You know I can't have kids." But I took a test just to pacify her, and my own curiosity really. Lo and behold, the second line came up immediately. I was pregnant. My husband and I went to the doctor's office a couple weeks later and saw our tiny baby on the ultrasound. We found out our due date was late August, the same day my great-grandmother had passed. I was shocked. What were the chances? Now I'm the proud mama of an almost 2-year-old daughter who has my great-granny's distinct little nose. She looks so much like her, it's amazing. I can't help but wonder if my granny knew something I didn't. She said the word "she" when she spoke of me being a mother. Coincidence? I'll never know. But I like to think she's still with me, despite my lack of religion. Case notes for the bonus file. Whispers from the Beyond. A tearjerker for sure. You know how they say that before death, our life flashes before our eyes? My hypothesis is that not only is it our lives that flash before us, but the lives of others we love too, including their buffered future. That flood of information stored in the subconscious, those barriers drop, and it all flows in. Erratically for most, as described. Hard to make out exactly what's happening and what it all means, but one thing is clear, you're going to be a great mother. You know the other thing too? Maybe it was sort of a cosmic trade. Maybe your great-grandmother made that trade. She was dying, and she could give out what little essence she had left, or maybe that would linger behind as a spirit, and use that to infuse you, so then you would be able to conceive. As an idea, a trade of some sort. Because yeah, energy can't be created or destroyed, it always just changes forms in the universe. Well, maybe it can be created. That is a different topic though, but I don't know, maybe that's not related, maybe it wasn't necessary, but for one thing is certain, she knew what was going to happen, and that you would be a great mother. So, that's beautiful. And now time for the quote of the day. It's not that I'm afraid to die, I just don't want to be there when it happens. Woody Allen. Yeah, same. I want that cloak of invisibility from Harry Potter. I think that story in Harry Potter of the Deathly Hallows. You have the wand, pure power, you have the resurrection stone, which can bring loved ones back, which is interesting, but even then they can't quite come back as they really are. I guess it can reanimate a body as they were, like a facsimile, but it can't restore the soul. And then of course, my favorite one is the invisibility cloak. And key of that is being able to hide even from death. I love life. I want to live forever. I don't know if that'll be possible. I think the soul is eternal, but I like this plane of existence, at least for a good while. I want to go out and explore the stars and see what's out there, you know? Maybe we'll have biological immortality, who knows? With AI coming into fruition now, there's going to be a lot of interesting developments, I think, within the next 20 to 50 years. I mean, even the next 5 or 10 years. There's no way to predict what's going to happen. If I can live for a good long while, you know, thousands of years at least, I'll take it. No invisibility cloak, but just science. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.